Good morning, everyone. Let's do some prayers. Om Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshwara, Guru Sakshat Parbrahma, Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Om Bhur Bhavaswa, Tatsavitra Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi, Diyo Yo Nah Prachodayat, Asto Ma Sadgamya, Tamso Ma Jyotirgamya, Mrityorma Mritam Gamya. Om Sehna Bhavatu, Sehna Bhunaktu, Saviryam Karvavahi, तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्वेषावहि ओम शांति 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 ओम. Saturdays, these days we are studying Yog Darshan and second chapter, Sadhna Pad, verse number 27. And we are in the middle of this, actually, understanding this great sutra. Tasya saptadha pranta bhumi pragya. So Rishi Patanjali is talking about that abhyasi whose discerning knowledge has risen and risen through those seven spheres, saptadha. And the furthest frontier is pragya. Tasya saptadha prant bhumi pragya. Okay, so this is what we were talking about. And I mentioned that in the first chapter we talked about samadhis, the Samadhi Pad, two main categories of samadhis we should remember, sampragyat and asampragyat. And sampragyat is the lower samadhi and asampragyat is the higher samadhi. And Rishi Patanjali went through even the stages of the lower samadhi. He divided into four parts: vitark, vichar, anand, and asmita. And he used the word over there, anugat. Vitark anugat, vichar anugat, anand anugat, and asmita anugat. So 4 levels of cognitive samadhi. And it's like a gradual deepening of the mental absorption. Okay, and this is also called as sabij samadhi. And sabij means this with the seeds of the sanskars, sabij. Even though the mind has become free from the roaming tendencies, but extremely subtle and virtually untraceable mental impressions still exist. And when these mental impressions vanish completely, we land in the state of consciousness as asampragyat samadhi. So loosely translated, this sampragyat samadhi is a higher samadhi. In this higher samadhi, we have transcended the field of cognition pertaining to the object of meditation, the process of meditation, and even ourselves as meditator. It is a supracognitive state where we feel free, not only from the roaming tendencies of our mind, but also from the virtually untraceable mental impressions, because they have also vanished once and for all. That's why this is called nirbij samadhi. So Sutra 47 of the first chapter, all the way up to 50, describe a mysterious transitional state between these two states of samadhi. And in Sutra 48 in that chapter, this state is described as a pragya, the self-luminous field of consciousness which is filled with the truth. And this is the highest yogic achievement and the culmination of human endeavor. Here, samadhi as a process comes to an end. And the experience gained in this state of pragya nullifies the effects of sanskars without creating sanskars of its own. That's why it's the purest and the highest state of inner illumination. Pragya is intrinsic to Ishwar's Prakriti. And when we are established in this state, we are established in Ishwar's Prakriti. Our mind is no longer our mind. It is Ishwar's mind. Our soul is no longer our soul. Because at this state, there's an unshakable realization that we are extension of Ishwar. In fact, our joy is essentially the joy of Ishwar. The notion of I and my has dissolved at this state. And what lies beyond this point is not in the realm of mental comprehension. And if mind cannot comprehend, words can definitely not utter it. So the state beyond this point does not lie in the domain of human endeavor. This is like an indescribable, unfathomable state which we attain with the divine grace. Because at this stage, we see ourselves through the eyes of Ishwar. And our experience is through the heart of Ishwar. So just like Patanjali divides the range of samadhi into two parts, sampargyat and asampargyat, in the first chapter, here we can see the division in the range of pragya into two main levels. And this division is based on how brilliantly pragya is illuminating the mind. The illuminative quality of the first level frees us from the operations of the mind. So it is known as karya vimukti, freedom from mental operation. And the illuminative quality of the second level frees us from the mind itself, and it's called chit vimukti. So the first level indicates that the veil of ignorance is becoming thinner. And the light of the inner being is becoming brighter. And the second level indicates that the veil of ignorance has vanished. And the entire field of our mind is fully illumined by the light of the inner being. So remember these two terms, karya vimukti and chit vimukti. So the unfoldment of the first level of pragya, karya vimukti, is described in the four stages. And we learned that in the previous two sutras. The self-revealing knowledge of our buddhi sattva, it shines in a direct proportion to the disappearance of the darkness of ignorance. And through consistent practice, and also the contemplation, this veil of ignorance becomes thinner and eventually vanishes. And long before it disappears, we are able to clearly see ourselves as we are. And with the dawn of this self-revealing knowledge, we see life as it is. We see the pervasive nature of sorrow. We definitely become aware of an undeniable truth in every experience, including those which are pleasant, and those also which accompany pain. We see that pleasure is short-lived, leaves us with a sense of dissatisfaction. And we can see that which compels us to repeat the cycle also. We are aware of this. But the realization is far more refined and profound than mere intellectual understanding. This is what's called anubhav or anubhuti, experience. Because at this level, it does not require any verification. We know our understanding of our body, mind, senses, objective world. We know it. There is nothing more to be known. The gurus say this kind of a state is na asya punah parigyanam asti. Nothing more need to know. This realization enables us to perform our actions without expecting lasting fulfillment. We discharge our duties wisely and selflessly also. Because sanskars has brought us into this human body, and we are here to eliminate our binding effects. And this is the first stage of the dawning of pragya, self-revealing knowledge. And as pragya intensifies, we are able to see the causes prevailing our current actions. So there is a attraction there. But through our discerning mind, we are able to observe how our sanskars pulsate in the depths of our mind, and how these pulsations lay the foundation for change. We are able to see how the currents of cause and effect are becoming connected. And in the light of this intense intuitive wisdom, when we pay attention to the internal functioning of our mind, we are able to trace the subtle process of karmic effect or the fruits. And after going through this process several times, a yogi becomes confident in the understanding of the realization between the cause and effect, between the deeply ingrained subtle impressions and the current experiences. Clarity is there. And this direct realization, because it's not dependent upon something else, it is the direct experience. It weakens the potency of our sanskars, and we are confident that the causes that churn our mind with afflicting thoughts have become weaker. It's called a chin he hetva. So with this realization, that veil keep on becoming thinner and thinner. And we also know there's nothing else to be destroyed. This is the second stage of dawning of Karya Vimukti. What happens after that? We know that our sanskars have lost the potency. They no longer have the power to churn our mind. We also know the power of Nirodha Samadhi, the process of the inward journey. With the practice of this Nirodha Samadhi, this realization who we are fills our mind and heart. And there's an unshakable faith in our practices. So in the beginning, there is a weaker faith, but as we realize it more and more, there's an unshakable faith. Now we are not doing our practice for the fruits. We are not practicing it to become better than somebody else or to attain some kind of a name or fame. We are doing our practice for its own sake. This is the difference between a person who has reached this level and doing the practice. Why do we see Lord Shiva is practicing? Lord Krishna is practicing. Gurus practice. Now comes the dawn of the fourth final stage of Karya Vimukti. And this is the stage where we will realize we have achieved Vivekhyati, the power of discernment. And we know this achievement is unshakable now. We no longer have any desire to see the causes of our mental operations. We know that those causes have been rendered impotent. We do not need to make any further effort to destroy them. We are free from the anxiety of accepting or rejecting karma that are currently manifesting. We truly become the seer. And outcome of that is we are at peace. At this stage, trustful surrender becomes our nature. We don't have to make an effort to surrender. It has become part of us. Both fortune and misfortune have lost their luster. And beyond this point, the second level of pragya, Chit Vimukti, dawns. This second level of pragya is really characterized by the dissolution of our mind. And this is the subject discussed in the Sutra 23 and 24 of this chapter. I keep telling you, taking you back towards those sutras which are connected. It's good to study them again and again. Because at this level, the mind is so pure, nothing is preventing the light which we are, the inner being. It penetrates through that mind. The entire mind is lit by the luminosity of inner being. And in this light, our mind realizes that all sanskars, including the subtlest. And what was the subtlest sanskar? Avidya. Remember, it all started from the avidya, the ignorance, has disappeared. By embracing avidya, the mind disconnected itself from its source. That's why avidya is called the root cause. So now it has disappeared. Because avidya vanishes, the realization dawns that the feeling of being separate from the inner being was really a painful mistake. It's almost like going somewhere where we lose ourselves. We thought it will be pleasant, but we end up making more mistakes. But ultimately, it dawns that that was a mistake in the beginning. So, with this realization, the mind is spontaneously withdrawn into the source. Swa karne pralye vimukha. Along with the mind, all the memories are also withdrawn into the source. So this extremely subtle process matures into this stage which is called Chit Vimukti. This is a stage supremely refined mind and memory. And we'll go back to this in chapter 3, verse number 55. Rishi Patanjali will tell us the purity of the mind is now identical to the purity of the Ishvara. This is where, when our mind is no longer our mind. So in the second stage of Chit Mukti, the supremely refined mind merges with the Mahat Tattva. And this merger is called yoga actually. Union. We have given it back where it came from. But at the same time, while we are practicing all this, living in this world, a yoga abhyasi is as active as, if not more active, than anyone else. Yoga abhyasi does not retire into the forests, stays, whatever the duty is given, will do it. But internally keep on doing these practices. But the only difference, even after achieving this Chit Vimukti, is that the actions of an accomplished yogi are free from doubt and fear. See, average person is constantly doubting and fearful. A yogi is free from that. These two, doubt and the fear, they are called the contamination of the mind. A yogi's mind is not contaminated by those. An accomplished yogi is comfortable while performing actions. And let me say, equally comfortable when refraining from actions. There is a time when we don't need to do anything. We don't need to get involved. Yogi is completely comfortable with that. A yogi's accomplishment is characterized by freedom, not by action or the absence of it. If there's a need to do the action, yogi will do it. If there's no need to do anything, yogi will not do it. Mind is still peaceful. So yogi's accomplishments culminating in the highest level of pragya is a process. That's what I want you to understand. It's a process. For some, this process is quick. For others, it could be somewhat drawn out. Based upon where we are coming from, what kind of a practice we have done previously. But in the following sutras, Rishi Patanjali is giving us a system where, regardless of where we stand today in our personal evolution, we can begin our journey. And if we continue with this practice, one day we can become the master of ourselves. So from verse 28, he starts to talk about this process or this practice which we all need to do. Verse number 28. Yog ang anushtanat ashuddhi kshay gyan deepti avivek khyati. Yoga, the practice leading to mastery over the roaming tendencies of the mind. That's a yoga over here. So yoga means union also, but over here he is going into the practice. So the practice leading to mastery over the roaming tendencies of the mind. Ang means limbs, components. Anushtanat, practice. Ashuddhi kshaya. Ashuddhi means impurity, contamination. Kashaya means destruction, elimination. So together, Ashuddhi Kashaya means destruction of impurities. Gyan Deepiti. Gyan means knowledge. Deept means illumination, ignition. The shine of knowledge or lighting the knowledge. Gyan Deepti. Avivek Khyati. Means from every direction or in every respect. See, there's a and there's a ah. If it was vivek, that means it's not vivek. When it's a vivek, that means in every sense, full, complete. And vivek khyati is the discerning knowledge. So avivek khyati means domain of unshakable discernment, or the discerning knowledge that is complete in every sense. Nothing left. So altogether, this verse says the practice of the limbs of yoga destroys impurities. Thereafter, knowledge continues to brighten all the way to Vivek Khyati. And Vivek Khyati, the domain of unshakable discernment. Okay, so this is the reason we practice yoga. So avidya is the root cause of sorrow. And the disappearance of avidya goes hand in hand with the appearance of vivek khyati, unshakable discernment. The two cannot be there together. We cannot say a yogi is ignorant. Unshakable discernment is characterized by pragya, which we are learning, the intense self-revealing knowledge. And in the light of pragya, we achieve karya vimukti. We learned that in the previous verse. Karya vimukti, another way you can understand karya vimukti is freedom from the consequences of our previous actions. That's karya vimukti. Okay. From the outside, other people might think that you are being bombarded by sorrows or by the gains, the joy or the pleasantness, but internally, there's no effect. It's not the outer which really matters. Lord Krishna, he lived in a great palace. In fact, a lot of wives also he had. Children, grandchildren, everything, lot of wealth. But internally, was he affected by it? Lord Ram, whether he was sent to the exile for 14 years or whether he was being given that kingdom, no effect. That's called Karya Vimukti. And this light of Pragya, we can achieve with this practice, Chitta Vimukti, freedom from our old mind. So these two terms I want you to add to your vocabulary. Karya Vimukti, Chitta Vimukti, and they are part of Pragya. Those are like stages of Pragya. Chit Vimukti is a state in which our mind is so transformed that its purity is identical to the purity of Ishwar. And that's what the Bodhisattva word is. The highly purified mind is called Bodhisattva. This is the pure essence of Mahat Tattva. So merger is yoga. A yogi who has reached this level of purity and union is Videha. You know this term also. Or even a Prakriti lay, which is even higher than that. So these terms are equivalent to Bodhisattva also in other language. So reaching this highest level of purity, where we see the Vivek Khyati is a process. And it does requires us to make an effort to cleanse our mind of its long cherished sanskars. Long cherished means we got to look within. What do we say? I like this. I don't like it. I cannot live without it. I cannot live with it. Those are long cherished sanskars. We need to get rid of our old mind. A mind which is filled with fear, aversion, attachment, distorted self-identity, ignorance, and the vast field of impressions, which are fed and propelled by these afflictions. We all know our body and mind, they are totally intertwined. Both are nurtured and held together by the power of breath. Because this nature has established this indestructible relationship between breath, body, and mind. Prakriti has done it. And that's why when we want to purify our body, purify our mind, it involves discipline pertaining to the body and also the breath. And in this sutra over here, Rishi Patanjali is introducing a system for transforming ourselves on all three levels. We saw earlier in this chapter, Tap Swadhyaya Ishwar Pranidhan. We learned that they are like a heart and soul of yoga. But in all these three, the body, mind, and the breath are very important. Whether we are doing the austerity has to be the bodily austerity, mental austerity, verbal austerity. Swadhyaya also, and Ishwar Pranidhan also. And he named it as a Kriya Yoga. In fact, this chapter started with that. The health of our body and its ability to serve the purpose of the soul depends on the healthy and harmonious functioning of these three: body, breath, and the mind. This is actually called the fruitful practice of yoga. When all the components of yoga work together harmoniously, we are moving towards our goal. That's how we can weaken our afflictions. And only then we can see that we are moving towards achieving samadhi. A weaker body, a weak breath, we cannot even perform our daily duties, let alone this meditation and reaching the samadhi. So in the following sutras, Rishi Patanjali describes the specific components of yoga, explaining how their mutually supportive functions help us achieve vivek. Remember that the goal is to achieve that with the help of the vivek. That means the highest level of purity and illumination. Only then we will have the union. Next, verse 29. Because in the previous verse, he said there are components. Now he is telling us there are 8 components, 8 stages. Yam, niyam, asan, pranayam, pratyahar, dharna, dhyan, samadhi. Asht angane. Yam is the self-control, restraint, withstanding the force of craving, yam. Niyam is keeping a firm resolve, niyam. Asan, posture, steady and comfortable pose, asan. Pranayam, mastery of the pranic force, breathing practice. Pratyahar, bringing the forces of our mind and senses to their natural resting place. Pratyahar. Dharna, concentration. Focusing the mind on a chosen object. Concentration, dharna. Dhyan is called meditation. Prolonged and uninterrupted flow of concentration is called dhyan. Samadhya. Samadhi is a spiritual absorption, perfect stillness, or a pristine state of mind. A state where the object of cognition, the process of cognition, and the awareness of oneself as a cognizant have merged in a single homogeneous awareness. I always tell you that in concentration, there are 3. Object of concentration, you, and the process of concentration. In meditation, only 2 remaining. Effort is gone. Only the object of concentration and you. And in samadhi, only 1. Super absorption into that object of concentration. That's it. No effort, no you. They have merged into one single homogeneous awareness. Asht means 8. Angani, limbs, or the components. Try to memorize, if you have not already, these 8. Okay? Restraint, observance, physical posture, mastery of the pranic force, recalling the senses, concentration, meditation, spiritual absorption are the 8 components of yoga. This is Ashtanga Yoga. Okay, 8 stages of yoga, and this is a Raj Yoga. We know that in the first chapter, Rishi Patanjali told us that yoga is samadhi, and samadhi is yoga. That's what we have been learning. Yoga, chit vritti nirodha. Now he is telling us that how to reach there. Got to start from somewhere. So he is describing the components of yoga sadhana for us. Strongest and the most deeply rooted among all the sanskars is a vipraya gyan vasana. Vipraya means something opposite. We are the Atma, but we have convinced ourselves we are something else. That is a vipraya gyan vasana, our uncompromising loyalty to our mistaken self-identity. We are not the body, but we think we are the body. We are not this name, but we think we are this name. Or a lot of other things we identify ourselves with. This sanskar is avidya, which is the breeding ground for all the other sanskars cluttering our mind. But as we practice these 8 components of yoga, the impurities originating from avidya and nurtured by it also are gradually and eventually destroyed. That is the reason Rishi Patanjali is giving us this beautiful system to follow. Even in 3rd chapter, verse number 7 and 8, he will continue this. He is going to go through each and every limb in a very detailed and a beautiful manner also. He will tell us yam, niyam, asan, pranayam, pratyahar. The first 5, they are the external limbs. And the last 3, dharana, dhyana, and samadhi, they are internal limbs. And then he will give a little twist to it. He says, even beyond that, there is something. And when we look at that, even this dharana, dhyana, and samadhi are external. But before we go there, we have to learn to practice the external components, because these external components, they'll help us rid ourselves of impurities, because they have the source in the external world. And because of that, our body is contaminated and our behavior is distorted. So it's not only the bodily, physical body, but our mind also. Because as I said earlier, it's not only the body, but the body, mind, and the prana. This whole system has to be cleansed in order to achieve that goal. So these impurities include those generated by unhealthy lifestyle, environmental contamination, unnatural breathing, disturbed sleep, and also some toxins which we have contained in ourselves based upon the religious or ideological toxins. So these are just only a few of them. If I say that my religion is the best and I tolerate others, that is also a toxin. Because when we say tolerate, that means automatically we are saying that the others are less. So there are a lot of toxins inside us. And Rishi Patanjali is telling us, unless and until you remove these toxins, you cannot attain that oneness. So we have to see what are these in us. So these are only external components, and the internal components, concentration, meditation, and samadhi, they help us attain freedom from impurities that have their source in our mental world. And among these impurities are our sanskars and the roaming tendencies of our mind. These two categories of impurities always go hand in hand, external as well as internal. Because in the presence of one, the other is bound to form. They help each other. In the same way, if we make one weak, the other one also become weak. See, just like sustained fear and anger, they are internal impurities. They destabilize our mind, but they disrupt many of our physical and cortical functions also. The symbolic relationship between our body and mind causes one form of impurity to give rise to the other. We are very much familiar with it. That's why the external limbs of yoga, which have a direct effect on our physical well-being, greatly enhance our mental well-being and meditation. Because meditation is the one which infuses our mind with clarity and stillness. So physical asanas, physical cleansing is crucial. So that's why all 8 limbs of yoga are to be applied together. And they are listed sequentially only for the sake of study. So now, starting from the next verse, 26 verses, Rishi Patanjali is addressing each of the 5 external components separately. And he's also telling us how to apply them in our daily life. I mean, look at it. The style of this writing, the sutra, highly condensed, highly concise. But still, Rishi Patanjali is devoting so many sutras for these 8 limbs of yoga. So that means it is so important for us as yoga practitioners, not just to understand them, but to practice them also. So next week, we will start with verse number 30, where he is giving us the 5 components of, or subcomponents of yama. See, there are 8 components, Ashtanga Yoga. Then first one is yama, the self-restraint. There are 5 of them. And we'll look at those 5. If we practice those, if we are fully established in those, what can really happen? How do we really clean ourselves? How can we really see our inner light? So the takeaway from today is just these, understand this pragya, vivek. Even if we are not there yet, but these terminology should be our terminology. And then memorize these 8 steps. Yam, niyam, asana, pranayam, pratyahar, dharana, dhyan, samadhi. And which one are internal and which one are external. External means they are for the body, for the senses. And internal is for the mind, for the intellect, for the chitta. Okay, the subtle body. The grosser body versus the subtle body. So we will next week start with verse number 30. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaye Purnameva Vishishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Thank you very much for joining.